In today's video, we're gonna do a full teardown on this V12 masterpiece. This is the engine of my S65, and this is probably the biggest and the last V12 AMG would ever produce. A few weeks ago, and full of excitement, I embarked on a journey to fix an electronical fault on my S65 that I purchased, to take it on a head-to-head battle against my BMW M6, which I've also rebuilt. But just sit back and see how this journey turned south. Now I went in underneath this car and I think I definitely made a discovery. What do you call it? A shocking discovery. Let me show you guys what I saw. So this is the engine oil cooler. And look at this pipe. This pipe broke off completely over there, which means this car potentially ran without oil. So I'm gonna have to abandon the electronics for now. Oh no. No. They said this car has an electronical issue. Let me show you guys what an electronical issue looks like. So this is apparently an electronical issue. So this so-called electronical issue left me with no choice but to remove the engine. So first things first, we're gonna have to disconnect the gearbox from the engine, and in order to do that, we're gonna have to remove the exhaust system. So we're busy removing the complete front section of the exhaust system so that we can access the bell housing to remove the gearbox. What we've also done is, seeing that the sump was off, we loosened all the connecting rod bearings in order for us to make it possible to turn this engine, because we need to turn the engine to remove the flex plate bolts from the torque converter. Once all the bell housing bolts were removed and the flex plate bolts were loosened, we could then go ahead, jack up the gearbox and move it away from the engine. Now the rest of the work after this was only at the top of the engine. So we had to lower down the vehicle and strip down all the cooling system components for the turbochargers on the top of the engine to give us some access, because we had some pipes and connections to loosen on the side of the engine and also a lot on the back of the engine. And once all the pipes and wires were disconnected, we could start lifting this engine out of the engine bay. And after a bit of hustling and tussling, finally this engine came out. And oh boy, am I in for a massive surprise on this engine. And there we have a 463 kilowatt, 1000 Newton meters of torque, M279 V12 twin turbo AMG masterpiece. Which leads us to this point. Now let's start tearing the sucker apart and see what is the extent of the damage. Now I haven't even started stripping this engine yet, and I already know that I'm in very big trouble on this build. So let me strip the sides and then I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. This ain't good. Stay tuned, you'll be shocked. This is the most expensive engine parts I've ever seen in my life. So we're starting straight off on the left hand side, removing some coolant hoses. So that's the starter motor. Then we need to move these coil packs out of our way because there's some heat shields we need to remove as well. And then we can access the bolts that bolt the turbocharger to the engine block. And then we need to remove the engine mounting as well so that we can access the bottom bolts of the turbocharger. And once all those bolts are out and the pipe fittings and hoses are all disconnected, then finally we can remove the turbocharger from the side of the engine. And there we have the left turbocharger removed. So I've got all the parts that came off the left hand side of the engine in that crate. That was the stuff that I removed a few weeks ago from the bottom of the engine. So let's strip the right hand side, let's go. The right hand side of the engine is pretty much the same as the left hand side, only that there's a few extra components such as the alternator that we need to remove. We've got a cooling system bracket that needs to come off as well. And then we can access the rest of the components, which is pretty much the same as the left hand side. Once again, moving the coils so that we can get the heat shields out. Once all the heat shields is removed, we can remove the engine mounting as well. And once the engine mounting is out, then finally we can remove the bolts that bolts the turbocharger to the engine block. Now for some reason this turbocharger was fighting with me. This turbocharger didn't just slip out like the left. I had to fight a bit before this thing came off. Oh, finally. And there's our right hand side turbocharger removed. And then once again we just store it in a crate. This just makes assembly so much easier. And there's our two turbochargers removed. So with the turbos removed, we're going to go ahead now, get that crankshaft out, and then I can show you guys in what deep trouble I'm in at the moment. So this is the bottom of the engine. I'm going to remove this bearing bracket so we can expose the crankshaft. So I'm jumping straight in, removing the crankshaft pulley, which is held in place with a 27mm bolt. Once that's done, I'm going to remove all the E10 bolts holding the bottom bearing bracket in place, and once that's done we can remove the main bearing bolts. I'm storing all the bolts in a container. It just makes assembly of the engine so much easier. I know I've been promising you that I'm going to share the information with you guys. We're almost there. Just hang tight. We're almost there. This channel is all about reviving forgotten, neglected, abandoned cars. So if that is the type of content that you like, please consider to subscribe. And once all the bolts are removed, we're just going to take a pry bar, and with some light tapping we're going to push this bottom bearing bracket upwards to break the sealing surfaces, and then off comes the bottom bearing bracket. And thank you for all your support. It means so much to me. Yeah, this thing's heavy. There we go. And our crankshaft's revealed. Dum dum dum. That is drastic from what I'm seeing. The main bearing spun in the block. If there's damage to this engine block, this engine's not repairable. So if you look over there, that's the main bearing. Main bearing is in its place. Main bearing is in its place. Okay, this main bearing has moved. There you can see there's a split of the two bearings. Not what I was hoping for, but let's get the crankshaft out. So the main reason why I'm stripping the front of the engine is only so that I can access the timing chain, because in order for me to remove the crankshaft, I'm going to have to take the timing chain off the crankshaft, and I'm also going to have to potentially send this engine block into the engineers, so the components are going to have to come off anyways. Okay, front strip was quick. Stripping is always easy, it's the assembly part that's not so easy. I'm going to flip the engine around now and see what I can do with the crankshaft to get it out. So I'm now removing all the con rods from the crankshaft and I'm packing out the connecting rod caps one by one, and on these caps you can see the discoloration of those bearings that seized up on the crank. And finally we can remove the crank to reveal this engine block, and let's hope there's no damage to this engine block, because otherwise we're in big trouble. So with the crankshaft out, let me show you guys what this engine block looks like. So right over here, there's these small marks. They look small, but they can make a big difference. I mean, if I had to slap new bearings in there, the possibility of that bearing locking up again is very high. So now we're sitting with a destroyed crankshaft. We've got an engine block. I'm gonna have to get my engineers to come and have a look at this before I'm gonna strip any further. I've also picked up that the valve stem seals are leaking, so the cylinder heads needs a complete overhaul as well. But that's not all. I want to show you guys something else that I picked up, and that's on These two buggers. These two buggers are destroyed. So this is the impeller in the turbo, and just listen to it. It's not supposed to sound like that. And this one as well. So with the knowledge that I have, I've made a list of, you know, the major components that we're gonna have to replace, like the crankshaft, the oil pump, turbochargers, conrods. I just send that list off to the agents, and I'm not even gonna utter the amount. I'm just gonna put it up on the screen. I mean, it's ridiculous for engine parts. Come on. What on earth is up with the dealers? I mean, how can engine parts be so expensive? Is it made of gold, like a gold-plated crankshaft or what? I don't know. But it's a shocking discovery. So they got completely destroyed running without oil. So I think let's just strip them up just to see what they look on the inside.
I'm putting away my pride. I don't care who's wrong or right. Oh, somehow you got me so magnetized, and I love it. You bring on my dark to light. I used to be jaded, testing my patience. Some people who walked in and out of my life. With you it's so different. This time I'm all in it. Thoughts of the future of you crystallized. Now you're breaking down my walls. I've never found love with no ego. You're stitching up my scars.
So we've got some damage in the cool side of the turbo, in the housing. And that damage was caused by this. Whew, check, there's a piece that broke off. So the fins were touching on that. See, there's another piece that's gonna break off. It's knackered. Let's strip the other turbo as well. Turbo number 2, let's go. What are we revealing? Oh. Another destroyed turbo. I was hoping that there was no marks in here. Unfortunately there are. And again, this side looks a little bit better than the other side. Although it can't even turn freely. But this thing is destroyed. So with destroyed turbochargers, a destroyed crankshaft, destroyed engine block, and the rest of the engine in crates, I decided I need a break. So I'm busy packing my car to go to the M Fest. If this is the type of content that you like, hit that subscribe button and I will see you guys in the next one. Or I might even see you guys at the M Fest. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.